Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Wherever you are on the planet, welcome to Sustainability in Your Ear, the podcast conversation about accelerating the transition to a sustainable, carbon neutral society. I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Thanks for joining in this important conversation. And before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that if you've got questions or suggestions for future shows, please send me a note at mitch@earth911.com. Clothing and textiles recycling has historically been scarcely available to consumers and woefully unsuccessful, with clothing piling up in warehouses or being sent overseas instead of turned into a new generation of clothing. Our guest today is Stacy Flynn. She's the CEO and co-founder of Evrnu. That's spelled Evrnu. Evrnu is a textiles innovation company. With a background in fashion and sustainability, Stacy is working to reduce the environmental impact of the fashion industry. Now, this is a topic we've talked about a lot, but Evrnu has made a significant mark in the sustainable fashion industry with a technology that recycles cotton garment waste to create premium renewable fibers. This process not only gives new life to discarded textiles, but reduces the need for virgin resources, cutting down on waste and pollution, as well as water use and a variety of other environmental impacts. The company's first product is called Nucycl, a recycled material made from cotton that they claim performs better than virgin cotton. Evrnu is pioneering innovative solutions that are both environmentally responsible and economically viable. With the growing demand for sustainability in the fashion industry, Evrnu's goal of making all textiles recyclable by 2030 and achieving a net neutral fashion industry by 2050 are bold targets that we wanted to explore. You can learn more about Evrnu at evrnu.com. Again, that's EVRNU, evrnu.com. Let's get to the conversation. But first, a quick commercial break. Welcome to the show, Stacy. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, except for a touch of the flu, it's a fantastic day here in the Northwest. And you're from the Northwest. You've built your business up here, but how do you describe your journey to the co-founding of Evrnu and becoming a leader in sustainable fashion?
Yeah, I definitely did not start as a leader in sustainable fashion. I like to say I did my time on the dark side early on in my career and helped to thoroughly cause this problem. But in the Pacific Northwest, I like to say I have access to people who think differently in the Pacific Northwest. And that's been really helpful as you start to think through how can we change the global apparel industry for the better. You really have to be around people who think differently.
And so tell me where on the dark side and how dark could it get?
Oh, the global apparel industry is a huge, it's like the biggest problem most people don't even know they have. Right now, we produce so much clothing. Like, let's look at the US as an example. We've got 17 million metric tons of textile waste being thrown away every year in the US. And this is the impact to make clothing, inexpensive clothing in particular, just is incredibly damaging to the environment, air, water, soil, trees. And it's also incredibly damaging to humans. We've exported most of the production of textiles and apparel outside the United States, outside of Europe, and to countries where labor laws are not as enforceable, and you can really continue to make inexpensive product. We really need to rethink this. Ironically, the damage caused by this industry eventually will kill the end consumer. That's how bad it is. So, our goal is to turn this around in our lifetimes because it doesn't need to be that way anymore.
And the industry doesn't seem to fully recognize that it will kill itself before it kills the rest of us. How do you explain that when you're having a conversation with somebody about why a company should adopt something like Nucycl, which I'd like to talk about in a moment?
Yeah, when I started the company, I went to graduate school to get an MBA in sustainable systems, and I started studying that particular topic. What it really stems from is corporations are legally required to maximize shareholder profit, which means that they, have to buy low and sell high
Mhm.
legally. And I think this is one of the root causes of the systemic issue because, if that is the legal responsibility and the CEO is personally held liable, then of course we're not going to see the changes that actually need to be made as quickly as we would like because of the legal requirement of the shareholders. So when I started Evrnu, I was like, okay, how would we change that? And we set the company up as a C Corp, but it's a social purpose corporation. So I have bylaws saying that if I'm damaging the environment or people, it doesn't give us a pass on profitability, but it also, means that we are intentionally not going to be doing damage to the environment or people as a byproduct of our business operations. We're also a B Corp. B Corp is very recognized in this space, but I think these designations are really critical foundationally for companies that want to set up and structure correctly from the get-go.
There's so much to unpack there, but I really want to jump into what Nucycl is. Tell me, this is your first product. It's a fiber. How is it made, and what is it made of?
Yeah, so we take cotton garment waste as our first product. We turn that cotton garment waste from a solid to a liquid, and then we press it into what looks like a thick paper pulp. Once the cotton garment waste is in that form, then we can dissolve it using a solvent called lyocell and turn it into a very thick, viscous liquid.
Mhm.
Once it's in that thick viscous liquid, we can push it through an extruder. An extruder, it looks like almost like a pasta maker. The
Mhm.
front end of the pasta maker has a dial on it that you can make linguine or lasagna. You can do the same thing with fiber. You can change the spinneret on the front end. It kind of looks like a shower head. The number of holes and the shape of the holes determine how the fiber will perform in yarn and fabric form. So that's how we're able to take waste and turn it into a higher quality product in its incarnated form than the fiber may have been in its original form when it was new.
So how do you describe what the end product is? Is it cotton? Is it a polymer? Is it a combination? How do you characterize
Yeah, it is not cotton. So, and that the FTC is very clear on that. So it is called a recycled lyocell. The input is cotton garment waste. The end resulting product can be changed or modified depending on who wants what performance
it?
characteristics, but the end result fiber feels a lot more like cotton than it does like a typical regenerated cellulosic that you may be familiar with.
Mhm.
So the pulp or feedstock really does change the performance and the hand characteristics.
So how does it perform in when it's used in clothing? What's the hand feel, for instance? And I understand there are different
Yeah,
types.
it's incredible. So we can I'm wearing a jacket right now that we made for Pangaya. We can make denim, we can make athletic apparel, we can make fabrics that look and feel like cotton. So we can make a lot of different things. There are a couple of things that are important. 90% of all garments made in the world are made from two fibers, polyester and cotton. So when we look at our products, we want to make sure that our products look, feel, and perform similar to polyester and or cotton, because that's where the bulk of the market is. So, and we can do that either depending on who wants what. So you can make it soft, you can make it shiny, you can make it dull, you can make it wick moisture away from the skin. There are just a lot of attributes that you can design into the products. We work with designers all over the world to develop new concept materials.
So the pasta maker can create a variety of materials, and essentially you've gone into the business of designing unique fabrics. in partnership with these organizations that you just described?
Yeah, absolutely. So my business partner, Christopher Staniff, he and I met each other working at Target Corporation in the early 2000s. And he was my mentor at Target. He's now my business partner. He's probably one of the most gifted textile developers in the world. And, another colleague of ours, Srini Narayana, is also on our team. He also worked at Target with us. But we are really passionate about developing products that not only meet performance needs, but that also give some added feature or benefit to our partner. So that's something we've done now for the last 30 years.
So tell me, who are some of your partners, and where would someone find an Evrnu Nucycl product?
Yeah, so we're working through those pieces now. We've done some proof of concept launches at retail. We're going to be modifying our go-to-market launch. I'll be really, really honest. We're launching our first direct-to-consumer product next month. And that will be available on our website, through our website, in partnership with a designer. One thing that we have had a hard time with is, it's not typical for brands and retailers to pay for innovation, or commit to innovation. This became a real challenge last year with the fund rate, with the investors
Mhm.
kind of sitting on the sidelines. And we had to get more creative around how we demonstrate we have a business. So we've decided to go direct to consumer.
That's really interesting. So will it be Evrnu branded?
It'll be Nucycl branded in
Nucycl.
partnership with the designer we're collaborating with. Yep.
Fascinating. So 2023 was just a terrible year for fundraising. But
Anybody
you
who
had,
lives to talk about it, I think you come out stronger, but it was brutal, brutal.
well, in my experience over the past 40 years or so, it seems like these are the times that really forge the most important and strongest and most resilient companies. Uh, what is your plan to grow in 2024 beyond the direct to consumer model? I mean,
Yeah.
are you
Yeah,
working
we're
labels?
working with an early stage, we're working with one of our early investors who's a strategic, very large garment maker in this space. And
Mhm.
we're working with them to negotiate our first binding offtake commitment. We have $500 million in non-binding commitments, and we got that pulled together in about 90 days because of the quality of our product. Now we're trying to secure at least a $20 million binding commitment so that we can de-risk the fact that we're pre-revenue with investors. So we're going to be kind of uh, for all intents and purposes, having two divisions within our sales structure. One division would just focus on that one investor and all of their brand partnerships. And then we would have another division focusing on independent design launches and things where we can really set perception and push the quality into arenas that are not traditional.
So if there's a designer out there who's thinking, I'd love to use this material, they can contact you and start a conversation.
Absolutely. Honestly, we have no shortage of designers contacting us. Every week we get 30, 40, 50 inquiries for our product. One of the biggest problems we have is if we can't attract the capital to increase our throughput, we can't really take on more business. It's a
Right.
tough reality right now.
Well, I think sustainability will come through it okay in the long run. Consumers want that. Now, you're
Yeah.
also about to launch a manufacturing facility. Where will the big pasta maker be located?
Yeah, so it'll be in Spartanburg, South Carolina. That is what we are focusing on right now, is to increase our throughput in Spartanburg, and we're actively raising capital to invest in that facility.
That's interesting. That's right in the heart of cotton country. How do the cotton growers feel about that?
Yeah, Cotton, we need cotton in order to make our product. So it's I think that anything that extends the life of cotton and our I should also mention, there are a couple of things that make our product really unique and our philosophy really unique. And that is, we want to take 100% responsibility for the products we put out in the world,
Great.
which means that we are really taking a look at impact to natural resources and impact to people. Um, and the quality of our product has to be on par or better than conventional materials. And for the first time, we are creating a material that is designed to be recycled into same or better quality. So we will have a recyclability guarantee on our Nucycl products, which I think is going to be really important. But those factors kind of encompass our internal standard. And I'm really proud of that because this is our 10th year anniversary and we've never compromised on our standard. 10 years ago, we kind of thought it was a little bit crazy. Like no one could ever take 100% responsibility for impact and make something high performing and recyclable. No way. And we just said, we're going to give it our best shot. And we have, built everything around it. And now it's proving to not only be possible, but being a far more effective business model because it means that we're able to deploy that embedded value for multiple cycles compared to our current model, which has one cycle and then it gets tossed.
It's great to hear it can be recycled and that you have a recyclability guarantee. Are you actually going to embrace a circular model where you're taking materials back or working with brands to gather their?
Yep. Yep. Our goal is to use as much of the existing supply chain as possible. Our technologies should really link the existing waste supply chain to the
Mhm.
existing apparel supply chain. And then the way I look at this is we're carving new neural pathways for this supply chain, but it's not like the supply chain of the past because right now you've probably heard of the fast fashion business model.
Yeah.
That model is based on, buying at the lowest price and selling at the highest possible retail. It's got a ton of collateral damage associated to it. Back in the 90s, when I was learning about it at FIT in New York, it was just starting to come out into the world, and brands and retailers made a lot of money on that business model because it took the sales cycle from 12 months down to 90 days, down to 30 days. And, the volume just price dropped, volume went up, and they made a lot of money.
So fast fashion, the typical fast fashion item is worn less than 6 times.
Oh,
How
yeah.
many times can a new cycle based jacket, like the one you're wearing, for instance, be washed and dried and so forth before you would need to recycle it?
Oh, well, and that's why quality is so critical. So this garment and Pangaya also designed it to be a jacket because you would not wash this weekly. You would wash it or launder it monthly. I honestly have never washed this garment and it does not absorb odor. And I'm putting my own product through the ultimate wear test. So it has never been washed and I've owned it for about a year now and I wear it a lot. So I just really think it's important to make sure that the performance is built into the product. It should last a lifetime. And when I say 20, 30 years, like this thing should last. And then we can recycle it into same or better quality at least 5 times. Commercially, we can recycle up to 10 times in our lab. That's what I call return on resource. How we set up our industrial process is all designed to really protect that polymer so we can use it again in the future. So, and this is why the circular economy business model is so powerful because it allows for phenomenal economics and it also reduces impact compared to the comp, which is cotton and polyester.
This is just a great story. I want to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back.
Sounds good.
Now let's return to the conversation with Stacy Flynn. She's CEO of Textiles Recycler and an advanced material innovation company, Evrnu. And for those of you listening, that's EVRNU. Stacy, you just mentioned that the material can be recycled 5 times outside the lab. You've done it up to 10 times. But what happens when the material is literally no longer reusable? Can it go into the landfill, or could it escape into nature and biodegrade?
Yeah, so the one cool thing about and to get a little nerdy, our technology is, for those who follow the cradle to cradle methodology, our product is a technological nutrient and a biological nutrient. So we
Great.
use it, it goes through the technological cycle for as many iterations as we can. But once it's ready, because it's cellulose, cellulose is the most naturally abundant polymer on Earth, it is certified to be biodegradable and compostable. So that's how we return it back to Earth when we're ready for that.
And just to be clear, that's industrially composted, or could it compost in a home pile?
Good question. I just got a home composter, so we'll see how it does within the home composter. We went through a biodegradability and compostability study with a third party, and they were testing the industrial compostability and biodegradability, not home.
Well, send me a swatch and I'll test it in my pile.
We'll definitely do that. Yes.
So how does the environmental profile of Nucycl compare with cotton in terms of carbon emissions, water consumption, and the other environmental impacts, such as the use of pesticides and so forth, which of course you don't use?
Yes. When we look at cotton, we look at water usage because cotton requires a lot of water. It's grown in arid climates, and you do need a lot of pesticide and insecticide on cotton typically. So when we look at cotton, we look at water, we're using 98% less water. We can also recover and reuse our water because we're not growing anything. So
Mhm.
keeping cotton in circulation is our ultimate goal. When we look at polyester, that's the really big player. That's 60% of the global apparel market. And the reason that it's 60% of the global apparel market is because cotton can't pick up that market share. There's just not enough room on Earth. There's not enough water on Earth to go after that. So we really need something that can replace polyester. Polyester is a byproduct of crude oil. It's a fraction, and so the energy is significant because we're pulling that from the Earth's core. But what is harder and you probably heard a lot about this and read a lot about this, is when we make garments, yarns out of polyester, and we go through the natural wash and wear cycle, that microscopic lint bioaccumulates in nature. Nature doesn't know how to break down petroleum polymers. So it bioaccumulates, versus what we're doing. 2 years ago, we broke a world record for tenacity. It's the first time a plant-based backbone has ever been able to outperform a petroleum-based backbone. So we were incredibly proud of that because we're like, okay, the only reason we use so much polyester is because it's plentiful and it's strong. Let's see if we can migrate some of the wash and wear clothing business to something more benign. And polyester will have its needs. I mean, we know we need it for strength and industrial, and you can recycle it. So it has its need, but the question we ask ourselves is there something that could replace that market share that is safer and more benign on the environment? And we believe that to be Nucycl.
So can you characterize, for instance, with regard to carbon emissions compared to polyester, how much lower is the carbon emissions of a lyocell or a Nucycl base?
Conservatively, it's 90% reduction in carbon emissions.
Okay, that's great to hear. Now,
Mhm.
as we talked about earlier, you do research and development services, and your site talks about creating flame retardant fabrics for clients. How many of these do you expect you're going to be making over the course of the next, say, 5 or 10 years? Are you planning to be a provider of 50 or 100 different
You
kinds of
know,
material?
This is a great question because I got 2 requests last night for very large industrial development clients to work on FR, fire retardant materials. The truth is right now, startups don't die from a lack of great ideas. We die from the inability to monetize. So
Mhm.
right now we are focusing on our apparel product to get our initial facility set up. So if we were to take on an R&D client, we would have to quote them and have them pay for that R&D work. Right now, very few companies are willing to pay or commit. So until we can generate revenue, those budgets are going to remain tightly scrutinized until we can get revenue turned on. So it's a long way of saying that it's not a priority for us right now.
Okay, that's interesting. That the whole idea of upfront payments for that research and development really goes to the question of how much urgency does the fashion industry feel in moving away from polyester? Do you get a sense that there's at least the begin and a tide is starting to rise?
Well, we've been doing this for 10 years now, and we are about a year away from getting our revenue turned on. We knew, Cristo and I knew when we started this company, if you look at there are only 17 generic fibers on the planet. 90% of the apparel market is based on two, cotton and polyester. So we knew that this was a 20-25 year play. We
Mhm.
wanted to try to get it done in 60 months, and we would have gotten to retail in 72 months had COVID not happened. But COVID did happen and our retail launches didn't happen until the end of 2022. So I really think like our goal is to demonstrate the commercial viability of our first technology, get the fiber in the hands of the supply chain and follow it all the way to consumer, and then really focus on consumer advocacy to get those products back into the supply chain. All of these paths need to be carved. Again, kind of that concept of new neural pathways. This is brand new, and just to reiterate, the all business models were new at one time.
Sure.
This one is new for our generation. Once we get the flywheel going and we show people what the economic benefit is and what the environmental reduction benefit is, we're going to see, I believe, a mass exodus to the old way of doing business, which will divest in the damaging materials and will start investing in the materials that create more value long term for the market and for humans.
Now, you mentioned consumer advocacy, and we absolutely agree that that's key. How do you recommend a consumer get a brand to start thinking about using something other than a fossil fuel based fabric?
Oh, such a good question. I think, consumers do a lot on social and supporting the brands that they care about.
Mhm.
I think that is probably one of the most effective ways of getting the attention of uh of brands and retailers. Brands and retailers, I think, sometimes underestimate, like, without consumer support, there
Mhm.
is no earnings margin or cash flow. So one of the biggest fears that a lot of these companies have is that their consumer base is going to cancel them or somehow turn their backs on them, because the cancel culture really does affect the bottom line and the productivity. But I think rather than blame and shame, I feel like highlighting some of these new technologies is the way to go long term, because we need the support. We need consumers to put it on their bodies, wear the hell out of it, and then when they're done with it, get it back to us, even if it requires them to do another step, like maybe put it in the mail and send it to us directly. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to interconnect everything yet, but We do need consumers to help us get this done.
Well, that collection process is something that we're all trying to figure out. Of course, it's what we try to map for all the consumers out there. As you think about that, enabling the circular economy, and I agree, we need to go for the rewarding the companies that take the lead. Going negative is, I mean, it's helpful, but it doesn't catalyze lasting change. It only catalyzes, it starts a reaction. As you think about how we're going to achieve circularity, and I know you're still working that out, what do you imagine clothing, buying and using and disposing of clothing will look like, say, in 2034 or 5?
Yeah, I've got this mapped out to the year 2050. I'll be 77 years old, and that's when I retire. I envision a world in which all virgin materials have a recyclable counterpart, and our industry is literally self-feeding. And as a result, the businesses that are participating are very healthy, and the people who are making, buying, selling apparel are also healthy. These are bold statements because it has never been this way. Since mass apparel was invented at the end of the 1900s, we have exploited people around the world, and moved things around the world where we can exploit people. But I would really like to see an end to this behavior in my lifetime.
And how do you imagine clothing and style will change in response to the availability of these new fabrics and materials?
Well, I see people connecting people with what they actually want
Mhm.
versus consuming more stuff. So, fashion is a cultural identifier. It's an artifact. If you look back through time, you can tell a lot about society based on the way they dressed. Fashion brings in all kinds of culture, music, art, design, food, you name it. It's a unifier. It brings people together. So I see us pulling people together in community to really support independent upcycled designers as legitimate business forces, and getting this localized recycling system developed and then rolling up to a more global infrastructure. I see a local connection developing, and that rolls up into a global infrastructure to support the mass. I think it's high time we had both.
Well, and I think your emphasis on the local is really important because the circular economy has to be both local and global, and there's interconnections. I mean, we draw a picture of one big circle, but in
Yeah,
fact, it's millions of circles
lots of
interact.
circles. Yep.
But that's also an opportunity to keep more revenue local and to create, for instance, we talked
Yes,
about the challenges of collection. Do you
totally.
imagine small businesses participating
I
or
do.
right?
I do. I see us expanding into that area very soon to connect and network these smaller operations. I see that is a very viable path to long-term growth.
Obviously, listeners are going to keep track of what you're doing. How can they follow your work?
You can go to our website. It is evrnu.com, evrnu.com, and follow us. You can follow us on all the social channels. Instagram, I think, is the one that we probably play on the most. But yeah, please stay in touch and follow our work.
Well, Stacy, thanks for spending time with the Earthlings today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
That was my conversation with Stacy Flynn, CEO of Evrnu. And once again, it's spelled Evrnu. They're the maker of Nucycl, and as you heard, a committed circular economy player seeking to build a business that keeps materials in use and out of landfills. You can follow Stacy and Evrnu at evrnu.com. The rise of social purpose businesses, which is exemplified by the B Corporation model that Stacy has adopted at Evrnu, is the basis for transforming industry, taking that long-term responsibility for the products that you make, the materials that you use, including the waste, and keeping them in circulation rather than out of landfills, can really make a difference. But the challenge is connecting purpose and profit, as Stacy pointed out. How can each of us encourage companies to stop making products and washing their hands of the environmental consequences of the take, make, waste approach to business? Well, fast fashion has encouraged wearing clothing just a few times, but clothing can last and become an integral part of one's identity, not just when it's new. I have clothing that I've worn for 30 years, but those clothes have really held up. Making clothing last and recognizing, as well as celebrating a fashion brand's durable clothing, is one way you can help create a movement for sustainable clothing and textiles for the home and office. So stay tuned. As always, we are going to continue to cover fast fashion and durable fashion, the fashion that lasts. I hope you'll take a moment to share this podcast or any of the more than 450 interviews that we produced on sustainability in your ear. If you take a moment to write a review on your favorite podcast platform, it'll help your neighbors find us. Folks, you're the amplifiers that will help us spread more ideas to create less waste. Tell your friends, your family, your coworkers they can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, or any of the fine purveyors of podcast goodness they prefer. Thank you for your support. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. This is Sustainability in Your Ear, and we will be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.